in sugar puffs. 4 dinosaur footprint stickers that glow in the dark. A set of glow-in-the-dark dinosaur footprints. Free in sugar puffs.
Once upon a time, Christmas was all magic. Now, at Euro Disney, magic comes to life in a wonderland of Christmas parades, dazzling stage shows, and fairy tale adventures everywhere you look. Every day through January 3rd. Plus, staying at a Euro Disney hotel makes celebrating Christmas even merrier. Call this number for special Christmas information or see your travel agent for bookings.
Harmony Protectives, style to perfection with added protection.
Hello?
Hi, Jerry, it's me, Linda. Just wondered if you fancy coming over. We could have a glass of
Hold on a minute,
champagne.
Linda. Is that sage and onion, Mum?
Jerry, they've just plumbed in the new jacuzzi.
Look, Linda, I'm really sorry, but Mum's just got a roast chicken stuffed with Paxo out the oven. I'll call you later.
Who was that, then?
Linda Lasardi.
Oh, not again, love.
Paxo, the stuff great chickens are made of.
Stains like blackcurrant juice are really tough. But Persil Micro Non-Bio works better on those difficult stains than any other non-bio powder. So guess who'll be wearing their favourite dress time and time again.
For over 1,000 electrical gifts from as little as £10. Look in your Argos catalogue. It's your guide to low prices.
After an exhausting performance, we Schmickler sisters love to relax with this great Name the Song game called Notability.
Just play the numbers on the card, and the players have to guess the tune.
Feeling. And you don't have to be musically talented to play.
Another game of note from Spears.
When I found out that this new Fairy Excel isn't just tougher than ever, but also gentler than ever, you could have knocked me down with a feather.
On Thames tomorrow at 8, Des O'Connor's in Hollywood, where he's joined by Naked Gun's Leslie Nielsen.
He's the kind of person I think who would do anything for a laugh.
From Beverly Hills 90210, Luke Perry. Actress Terry Garr and Hollywood musical legend Donald O'Connor, still tapping after all these years. And there's music from Kathy Dennis and chart-topping Whitney Houston. A great lineup for Des tomorrow at 8 on Thames.
Back this afternoon, don't forget it's 2:15. It's snooker, the Colite World Match Play Championship. But now we catch up with the world news from ITN on Thames Television. It's exactly 12:30.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunchtime news from ITN.
Hello. The main news this Tuesday. India arrests Hindu leaders as the temple violence continues. More than 300 have already died. Here in Britain, 4 more Hindu temples are set on fire. Police and community leaders appeal for calm. The Somali gunmen the US Marines are about to take on, and the drug that makes them high and highly dangerous. And the baby born with no natural immunity to germs. New treatment offers hope.
Also, are we seeing the beginning of a mutiny in the Labour Party? 6 months into the job of Labour leader, John Smith is criticised by some members of his own party for his lack of leadership. How is he doing? That's today's talking point.
There was further ethnic violence in India this morning, with at least 26 people being killed in Bombay. Witnesses says rioters throwing stones and firebombs fought fierce battles with police. In all, more than 330 people have now lost their lives. In Bombay, 71 people have been killed, 21 have died in rioting in Jaipur, 20 people are reported dead in the state of Gujarat, and 17 have been killed in the industrial city of Kanpur. In New Delhi, the police have arrested the leaders of the radical Hindu BJP party. And in Ayodhya, the security forces have driven away thousands of Hindu radicals who sparked the violence by destroying a Muslim shrine.
In the streets of Old Delhi, where Muslim and Hindu live side by side, a second day of curfew. But it was a curfew senior clerics at the capital's biggest mosque were determined to break. A symbolic protest at the destruction of their Ayodhya shrine. Here, warnings of serious disorder unless the government curbs the excesses of Hindu fundamentalism. A planned march to the Prime Minister's house lasted only a few yards before the Muslim leaders were arrested. As they were led away, the police were clearly nervous, recalling the threat of sniper fire from rooftops in previous communal clashes. Also arrested today, the leaders of the Hindu fundamentalist movement accused of inciting the trouble at Ayodhya. For the party leader, a public arrest in front of the cameras, the government here trying to show they mean business.
I am more concerned about the announcements of yesterday, about banning of organizations, about rebuilding of the mosque. All these things are indicate that the government is on a suicidal course.
Mr. Advani's campaign to build a temple on the site of the mosque has proved a violent flashpoint in Indian politics for almost 3 years. It's an issue that's helped bring down one government already. In India's parliament today, chaos continued. Demands for Mr. Advani's release and more advice for the Prime Minister, Narasimha Rao.
Right now, the first thing is that he must quit.
The government's tactic is to swamp the towns and cities of India with a massive police presence in an attempt to keep the lid on religious tensions. But this remains a grave and unpredictable crisis. Mark Austin, ITN, Delhi.
Here, 4 Hindu temples were damaged overnight in a series of arson attacks in the West Midlands and Greater Manchester. In the worst incident, the Sri Krishna temple in West Bromwich was destroyed. The police and religious leaders have appealed for calm.
The fire at the Sri Krishna temple in West Bromwich was the worst of the 4 incidents. Like others in Birmingham, Coventry and Greater Manchester, this one was started deliberately. The building has been so badly damaged, it may have to be pulled down. Only the sacred idols of the temple's gods, Krishna and Radha, were left largely intact. The Gujarati community who worship here are in shock.
We don't like this situation to spread.
How worried are you about it?
Very. We are the very peaceful community, especially Gujarati community in this borough.
The latest attacks have been condemned by all sections of the Asian community. Prompted by fears that the communal violence in India may take a grip here, an emergency meeting was called in Birmingham this morning between Asian leaders and the police. All are calling for calm.
In my opinion, they shouldn't take this law into their own hand. And if they carry on, it will be very bad for the whole of the Muslim community in the world.
I hope it's a one-off. And it's very shocking news. We always had very good relations in Sandwell, and this is a very terrible setback.
What we've got to do now is work with the police and the community, calm the situation and make sure good race relations prevails in Sandwell.
So despite the extensive damage to yet another Hindu temple, the feeling is amongst the Asian community that this is just an isolated incident. Anya Sitharam, ITN, Birmingham.
Waiting to speak to us now is Professor Akbar Ahmed, a Cambridge professor who's an expert on Muslim affairs. Professor, first of all, the attacks we've seen on temples here, do you think these are isolated incidents, so to speak?
No, I think there's a definite connection with South Asia. As you know, the community does keep very close links with its home country. And so far, relations have been cordial, and I hope and pray that they remain cordial. But when emotions run high, as they are running now, I think you will see tension developing between the groups.
Now, as to India itself, there have been arrests. Won't these only inflame the situation, make matters much worse?
Yes, the government is in a quandary. It has very difficult choices to make. Either way, the objectives and the ultimate goals may not be very clear. If it takes one route, there may be further violence. If it doesn't do anything, which it hasn't been doing very much over the last few months, matters could just continue to escalate.
Now, what is your vision of the future on this? Can Hindus and Muslims in India live together, or is this the start of a divide which no one will be able to bridge?
That's a difficult question. They have lived together for centuries. There have been periods of great synthesis between the cultures, periods of harmony between the cultures, and I hope that that will be restored. I think government and administration have to be much firmer. I think the argument is already shifting. We are talking whether the Prime Minister will remain, whether the government will remain. I think that's rather irrelevant right now. We have to restore the sense of sanity and normalcy for the people concerned, the people affected, both Hindus and Muslims, the normal, ordinary people living in the villages and the towns of India today.
Is there a danger at all, do you think, that India as a democratic state might not survive? A sort of Hindu fundamentalism might take over?
I think we are at a very critical juncture. I think matters are very serious. We are just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and everyone, whether people who support the action, people who don't support the action, people on the left, the right, the communalists, the fundamentalists, everyone has to really be aware of how serious matters are right now. And I'm not only talking about India, I'm talking about South Asia as a whole.
Professor Akbar Ahmed, thank you very much indeed.
Now to the problems of Europe. EC foreign ministers have been meeting in Brussels to try to find a way around Denmark's rejection of the Maastricht Treaty. In the run-up to the crucial Euro summit in Edinburgh, ministers have been discussing British proposals to allow the Danes some concessions.
Just 3 days before the Edinburgh summit, and the Foreign Secretary was this morning bracing himself for battle over what British officials regard as a make-or-break issue, Denmark.
Good morning.
His mood was upbeat, but agreement on the issue is far from assured. At stake, the credibility of the British presidency and the Maastricht Treaty.
We'll see what changes may be needed to our texts, our proposals, in order to make possible an agreement at Edinburgh, in order to make possible a second Danish referendum. And I'll be pointing out again that Denmark can't be forced into anything. Denmark can't be excluded. Without Denmark, there won't be a treaty.
From the Danes themselves, there was cautious optimism about Britain's compromise plan over their demands for exemptions from the Maastricht Treaty.
I think the Brits have done a good job in trying to find a way of solving this problem, but of course we have to be absolutely sure that it lives up to the expectations of the Danish voters. So we are not finished yet, but I hope we'll get there.
Since the Danes rejected the treaty last June, ministers have been struggling to find a formula which enables them to have a second referendum. But some fear the British proposals go too far, threatening to unravel the whole treaty.
Well, I think there are some complications over there.
What kind of complications?
Well, the exclusion for some of the objectives of the Maastricht Treaty is, of course, a problem we have to deal with.
For Britain, resolving the Danish question is not just a matter of trying to ensure success at the Edinburgh summit, but also something which officials believe is critical to the future direction of Europe. Whether the community moves ahead as 12 or at different speeds, with Britain possibly being left behind. Libby Wiener, ITN, Brussels.
Here's some good and bad news for motorists this morning. BP has announced petrol price cuts of up to 13 pence a gallon from midnight tomorrow. It's because of a fall in world prices. But the car giant Ford has announced that it's putting up prices in the new year. The increases range from over £250 for a Fiesta to over £1,000 for a high-performance model, wiping out the benefits of the abolition of car tax. Ford blamed the rise on the devaluation of the pound.
Thousands of jobs in the aerospace industry could be threatened after a major airline order was cancelled. America's Northwest Airlines has withdrawn its request for 74 aircraft from the European Airbus consortium. Wings for the Airbus are made at the British aerospace plant at Chester. A union leader described the news as a bitter blow.
To Somalia now. Gunmen loyal to one of the country's main warlords have seized an Italian relief worker, and that's raised fears for the safety of other aid workers ahead of the American-led military intervention tomorrow. One problem for the US troops is the large number of young gunmen in the country, many of them high on a drug called khat.
Early morning at a dirt airstrip 30 miles west of Mogadishu. The daily flights are landing from Nairobi, bringing not relief, but trouble. On board, bundles of khat, a narcotic plant grown freely in neighboring Kenya and craved for in Somalia. A bunch, known locally as a mardoof, sells in the market for between £2 and £10, according to quality. The main buyers, the gunmen and security guards who now ride arrogantly through the city's streets. They spend up to half their earnings on the drug. By midday, they're all chewing on the green stalks. They say the khat makes them feel mature and potent. They can go without sleep and are afraid of nothing. Guns and narcotics, a dangerous mix.
The major effect it is actually having is on the youth, on those who are not doing much. They're doing much less. And they're also becoming more, in a way, uncontrollable because of the narcotic effect.
The khat trade not only finances the warlords, but also buys the loyalty of their gunmen. For khat is addictive. The Americans may be able to take their weapons, but not their weed. And the more the gunmen chew, the more unpredictable they get. Jeremy Thompson, ITN, Mogadishu.
Elsewhere, millions of people face a winter of misery, suffering from cold and starvation. The charity Oxfam says hundreds of thousands may die in Europe and Asia unless they get help. Oxfam's now launched an appeal for warm clothes and £500,000 in cash.
The town of Torkan in the Khyber Pass. Here at the border with Pakistan, 6,000 refugees a week are going back to their homes in Afghanistan. Part of a human tide of 1.5 million people who've returned to the country this year after 14 years of fighting. Forgotten refugees of a forgotten war. They now face one of the world's most bitter winters in a country where the infrastructure has been almost totally destroyed. 3 in 10 children die under the age of 5 here, and that's in the good times. Now they have to forage for survival, always with reminders of the instability of life here.
Refugees have been returning in the last few weeks to find their homes destroyed, their villages devastated. They lack food, they lack fuel, the grain silos are empty.
In Afghanistan itself, 3 million people will need emergency assistance this winter. In Iraq, 750,000 are at risk. In tiny Albania, 180,000. And in former Yugoslavia, 2,700,000. That's nearly 7 million people facing severe winter conditions without proper food and shelter. At a London press conference this morning, Oxfam appealed for extra help to fight what they're calling the new Cold War. And they're not just looking for cash.
We're specifically asking for, and these are the 2 items we want, overcoats and long-sleeved jumpers. Those are the 2 items we want. We want 500,000 of these.
It's a race against time across Europe and Asia to beat a winter that threatens greater casualties than the world's wars.
A story now about a very special 18-month-old baby. Danielle Singleton has spent her entire life in a sterile room because she has a severe immune deficiency that's left her unprotected against infection. She's just begun a revolutionary treatment at London's Great Ormond Street Hospital, and there are high hopes her condition will improve.
I'll be speaking to Dr. Jonathan Brostoff, an expert on her condition, after this report from Vernon Mann.
Little Danielle Singleton is a happy little soul, content with her playthings in the tiny, sterile room at Great Ormond Street that's been her home and her prison for most of her young life. Her only visitors, apart from nurse and doctor, are her mother Rachel and father Ray. He took these pictures, and they have to scrub down and wear special clothing on their twice-weekly visits from their home in Somerset. Brother Dean is 4 tomorrow. He's only ever allowed to cuddle his sister through plastic sheeting.
Well, it's very sad, but we just have to accept it and, you know, carry on from day to day. She's pleased to see us, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, she recognises us and waves, starts laughing and giggling. She loves her dolls.
Stay there.
She loves splashing about in the bath, waves to everybody at the hospital. They all love her. I think she's wonderful.
At home in Somerset, Danielle's presents are wrapped. She won't be home for Christmas, But like the doctors, the Singletons hope the American drug will eventually give Danielle some immunity to disease. At present, she has none. Her cot and her dolls are kept ready for that day when they believe she will be well enough to resist the dangers of the outside world.
The consultant seems quite confident that it'll work, so we're just hoping and praying that he's right, and hopefully she can come home soon.
Danielle's body rejected a bone marrow transplant. Her father was the donor, but Great Ormond Street have told the Singletons this morning she's doing well and is showing no adverse reaction to the new treatment. Vernon Mann, ITN, Somerset.
With us now is Dr. Jonathan Brostoff, head of the Allergy Clinic at Middlesex Hospital. Dr. Brostoff, she's a lovely little girl. Could you explain to us again what exactly is the matter with her?
She has a very rare condition where the white cells don't function properly, and you need white cells to combat infection. So if you have too few white cells and an infection comes along, you haven't got the army to hit it and get rid of the infection.
So she's completely incapable of dealing with even the most common cold?
Yes, she would be incapable of even dealing with that.
Now, we just heard that the consultants say that she's reacting quite well to treatment. How exactly does the treatment work then?
There are various sorts of treatment, and this treatment is designed to help the white cells, one family of white cells, the lymphocytes, to actually divide and grow and become larger in number. She was given a graft from her father, which unfortunately didn't take, and that graft, if it had, would have provided her with a new family of lymphocytes. So this drug is designed
Which
to...
are white blood cells to protect you?
White blood cells to protect you against infection. And this treatment is designed to stimulate her own white cells to grow and become active.
So then, if it works, will she be able to lead a life of a normal little child?
Well, one would hope so. I think it's early days yet, and it is a very rare condition. But one would hope that this treatment would be successful, and the early signs are that, as they say, she's tolerating the treatment very well.
Does it have any implication, this drug, this new drug, for any other types of conditions?
Patients who are immunodeficient in general, who've lost their white cells, and AIDS patients also lose their white cells, could benefit from this sort of treatment. And if one takes perhaps the patient from the sublime to the ridiculous, as it were, the patient who has 10 colds a year obviously has a minor form of immunodeficiency. And it could be that this or a similar immune stimulator could help them as well.
Dr. Brostoff from the Middlesex Hospital, thank you.
Thank you.
Telephone operators and trade unionists are lobbying MPs today to try to prevent changes to the 999 emergency call system. The proposal is to reduce the 70 centres handling the calls at the moment to 3, one each for Scotland, Wales and England. TV personalities from The Bill and London's Burning were going to take part in the protest, but they were unable to attend at the last minute.
Though the TV stars couldn't make it, Labour MPs said they'd fight the proposal to streamline the existing emergency services. 250,000 people signed the petition, and trade union leaders warned it would lead to extra stress on staff and longer waits for callers.
It may be about reducing staff numbers, it may be about saving money because the emergency services at the moment are 999 is a free service. Oftel, of course, protest very loudly that that's not the case, but we think there may be a hidden agenda.
There are some 22 million 999 calls made each year, a figure expected to rise to over 24 million by 1995. Oftel says the new system's needed to centralise emergency calls because more and more companies are entering the phone business.
We're looking for an improvement in the call handling time for emergency calls, and we will be absolutely determined to guarantee that that happens, and we won't agree to any changes that don't make that absolutely certain.
This afternoon, Labour MP Kate Hoey will question the Prime Minister about the proposed changes. But Oftel said it was confident it would not mean a drop in standards if the new system is introduced in about 3 years' time. Mark Webster, ITN, Westminster.
Finally, in part one, Father Christmas has come early to suburban South London, and it's upset the local council. John Gladden has fixed a 12-foot inflatable Santa on top of his semi. The display also includes some festive fairy lights, but sadly Santa's reindeer seems to have come a cropper. Mr. Gladden's first roof decoration was a stuffed fish. When the council objected, he decided to add some tidings of glad joy.
Time to have a short break now. When we come back, a summary of the main news so far, plus a full weather forecast.
That'll be at 1 o'clock. Straight after the break, John Smith has had half a year as Labour leader, but already he faces a serious mutiny, with some in his own ranks saying he's not doing an effective job.
Is he the man to fight the Tories and modernise his own party? Contrasting views in Tuesday's Talking Point in a couple of minutes.
Citizen, because a watch should show more than seconds, minutes, and hours.
Did you know that if you shut your doors, you shut out fire for up to 20 minutes? So don't leave your doors open, and don't let the fire be your fault.
Share the fantasy. Chanel number 5.
To Birmingham, with the third exit of Spaghetti Junction. Take the second on the right, left of the lights, straight past the green man, and we're down there on the left-hand side. Okay then, see you Monday. The third exit of Spaghetti Junction. Past the green man. Graham, nice to see you. Take a seat.
Before we start, can you tell me where the loo is?
Yeah, get through the door, second on the left, past the drinks machine. I'll tell you what, I'll show you.
Is your big box powder fading your colours? Now there's totally new Daz Colour to help keep colours brighter for longer.
I've used my powder for years. The colour's fine.
Compare it to new Daz Colour.
Oh, I don't know. I'll tell you now, it's certainly opened my eyes. Absolutely incredible. The colours. These are some of Sam's shorts. I've washed those quite a bit since I've had this new Daz colour. And the colours obviously come out exceptionally well. All the grime came out and everything. I just can't get over it. These were the shorts I bought last year. You can obviously see how they faded in the elastic. I've always used that powder that my mum used. I never thought to change. I can't believe I've been so blind for so long.
Louise, let's test your loyalty here then. Here's 2 big packs of your old powder for your 1 Daz.
No, take this one.
You're not going to upset your mum, you know?
I know I am. Well, mind you, I might be able to convert her to start using Daz colour, mightn't I?
New Daz Colour. See the difference and you won't swap.
Sir Ranulph Fiennes is attempting to walk unsupported across the Antarctic, so that one day others might just walk unsupported. Please help this venture in aid of the Multiple Sclerosis Society by making a donation at any branch of the Halifax Building Society. And then one conquest could lead to another.
Hello again. This is part 2 of the lunchtime news.
And it's time for today's Talking Point. John Smith has been leader of the Labour Party for less than 6 months, and already he's under fire from some of his own troops. His supporters regarded him as the ideal man to revive the party after its general election defeat. However, at least one Labour MP has expressed public worries about Mr Smith. Other party workers share his views. Well, to discuss the issue of the John Smith leadership are Michael White from The Guardian, who's in Westminster, and here in the studio, George Jones from the Daily Telegraph. Michael White, is John Smith doing a poor job?
No, much too soon to say that yet. I've written and reported similar criticisms to those in the Telegraph today, except the Telegraph put it on the front page, makes a change from attacking John Major for the Telegraph. And I think the criticism is basically that he hasn't been so visible in public. He's staying off television interviews like this. He's trying to do the internal party reforms, proportional representation, the trade union relationship in comparative quiet. And he's not been making quite such success as Labour MPs wanted at question time. But that second one is pretty trivial, and I think Smith is a man who knows his own mind, full of self-confidence, still has the confidence of most of his colleagues, and is taking the long view of what it takes to get Labour elected.
George Jones, has he got what it takes to get Labour elected in the long run?
Well, certainly if there was a general election tomorrow, I'm sure there would be a landslide Labour victory. But Labour has been in this point before. I mean, in the last Parliament, it was 20 points ahead of the Conservatives. They had height of the poll tax row, and yet the Conservatives changed their leader, came back and won a general election. I think the main criticism is that John Smith appears to be just sitting back. Michael says he's taking the long view, but he appears just to be sitting back and hoping that one more heave, that victory will fall into the Labour Party's grasp at the next general election. But this recession will end, and the Conservatives are confident that when it does, their fortunes will pick up and Labour will still be languishing in opposition.
Well, George talked there about one more heavism. That is a good question, because there is a view in the Labour Party, Tories are messing it up. Economy in serious trouble. One more heave and we'll win. Question is, does Smith in his heart of hearts believe that? He's a Scot. In Scotland, the Labour is very much more of an establishment party. Middle-class, respectable people vote Labour. In southern England, it isn't like that. And I think in his head, if not his heart, Mr. Smith knows that you've got to win back voters in the south. You've got to make them believe that Labour and Labour's sorts of programmes are consistent with individual aspirations and getting on in life, which wasn't apparent even after Neil Kinnock's years of steady reform.
It was a Labour MP from the south, wasn't it, Nick Rainsford, who said
right.
This famous phrase that the party was in danger of sleepwalking into oblivion.
Yes.
Michael?
Well, I mean, of course he's shown, I think he's just shown no sign of addressing the real problems and issues which helped Labour to lose 4 elections in a row. I mean, we've seen no real sign of looking at the tax and benefits policies. As I say, just sitting back, and it appears wallowing in the government's difficulties. We know John Major's unpopular. This government is, lurching from disaster to disaster. But, there is no real sign that the Labour Party is putting forward its own alternative policy on the economy. I mean, where is it?
Well, as George knows, John Smith is about to appoint a commission on social justice. It's looking at the whole tax and benefits package. Like the Beveridge report of the 40s, which gave us all university education and straight teeth, the welfare state, he's trying to put together a new package which, as I say, is relevant to people's lives in their daily goings about, their schools, their jobs, their career prospects, and this commission is about to be appointed. It'll take a couple of years to do its business, but if it's a solid, independent and reputable operation, it may change the climate and the language in which politics are debated in this country. He's got other things to do. He knows they're there. He just hasn't chosen to make a very high profile of them yet. But I'm bound to say I spoke last week both to Tony Blair, who's a sort of upmarket Labour university man, and John Prescott, who's a trade unionist who came up the hard way, and they both still retain a surprising amount of personal confidence in Smith.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other criticism, there's a criticism of lack of economic policy. There's also now a growing criticism among Labour MPs, and this latest report refers to a pressure group, the Labour Coordinating Committee. They feel that John Smith is backtracking on the internal party reforms, the modernisation of the Labour Party, which Neil Kinnock set in train and has again, in recent interviews, sort of pushed forward, that the Labour Party is still going to remain in hock to the trade unions. It was the trade unions who delivered John Smith such a landslide victory. We're not going to get one member, one vote in internal party elections and in the constituencies. So, I mean, I think on both fronts there is a criticism that the Labour Party is drifting.
One last thing, you mentioned question time. That's when most voters will see Mr. Smith at work, so to speak, Michael White. I mean, he hasn't actually done very well there at all. Very surprisingly, one might have expected
He's very good at set speeches. He's a barrister. He's a very, very smart barrister, and nobody disputes that. Question time is much trickier, and journalists like me, who've seen it for many years, know how hard it is. Plenty of time to do that. The thing in terms of the voters is whether or not they think this man is tough enough, smart enough, and has enough character to be Prime Minister. And I think the answer to that is probably yes.
Right. We have to leave it there. Michael White, George Jones, thank you both very much indeed.
It's a few seconds after 1 o'clock, the main news. There was fresh ethnic violence in India this morning, with at least 26 people being killed in Bombay. Witnesses says rioters throwing stones and firebombs fought fierce battles with police. In all, more than 330 people have now lost their lives. In New Delhi, police arrested the leaders of the radical Hindu BJP party. Muslims there have marched in protest at the destruction of the mosque at Ayodhya on Sunday. And many shops and offices have been affected by a general strike. Here, 4 Hindu temples were damaged overnight in a series of arson attacks in the West Midlands and Greater Manchester. In the worst incident, the Sri Krishna temple in West Bromwich was destroyed. The police and religious leaders have appealed for calm. EC foreign ministers have been meeting in Brussels to try to find a way round Denmark's rejection of the Maastricht Treaty. In the run-up to the crucial Euro summit in Edinburgh, ministers have been discussing new British proposals to allow the Danes some concessions.
Let's see what changes may be needed to our texts, our proposals, in order to make possible an agreement at Edinburgh, in order to make possible a second Danish referendum. And I'll be pointing out again that Denmark can't be forced into anything. Denmark can't be excluded. Without Denmark, there won't be a treaty.
There was good and bad news for motorists this morning. BP has announced petrol cuts of up to 13 pence a gallon from midnight tonight. But the car giant Ford has announced that it's putting up prices in the new year. The increases range from over £250 for a Fiesta to over £1,000 for a high-performance model, wiping out the benefits of the abolition of car tax. Ford blamed the rise on the devaluation of the pound.
More business news, and Carlton Communications, which takes over the London weekday ITV franchise from Thames in the new year, reported a 15% jump in pre-tax profits. They were £102.3 million for the year to September the 30th, compared with £88.8 million last time. In the city, share dealing was low-key. A short time ago, the FT100 share index was down a couple of points. The pound was up nearly a cent against the dollar, and it was up a half a pfennig against the German mark.
And let's find out what weather we'll have this afternoon. Here's Richard Edgar.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Well, for most of us, it's going to be a fairly nice afternoon, but changes in store, as it always is at this time of year. We've got quite a change going on out in the North Atlantic. High pressure's coming around. That's going to bring milder air eventually. But before it, this weather system's going to bring some rain and perhaps snow to the north and west. And over in Europe, well, that weather system's there bringing some fairly heavy snow all the way from Innsbruck up towards Scandinavia. So change with us as always, but getting milder over the country over the next few days. Now, closer in, this is the cloud picture at the moment. It's breaking up in the eastern areas, so an improving situation down the eastern side, and this thicker band just slowly edging its way now to the north and west, so deteriorating a bit up in those areas. If we take a look at the symbols in a bit more detail, well, this is how it looks at the present time. Lots of bright sunshine around, particularly in the western and those central areas. The eastern side here a bit dull for the time being, but I think that's soon going to brighten up. And really dry everywhere apart from the odd shower in the northwest of Scotland, and some rain beginning to edge its way now into those northern and western parts of Ireland. And I think as we go towards tea time, well, it clouds up in the western area, but that rain doesn't in fact get across the Irish Sea until probably later on this evening. So elsewhere, basically a dry, bright and sunny end to the day, and a fairly nice afternoon to be out and about. Now, temperatures today, 6, 7 and 8 is very much the average for the time of year, not too much in the way of wind. And 8 degrees there, Sonia, well, that's a fairly nice 46 degrees Fahrenheit.
Richard, thanks. What about Christmas? A lot of people are calling in asking if it's going to be a white Christmas. What are your predictions?
Well, the phone never stops ringing. I can't really forecast it this far ahead, but the fact is the last true white Christmas we had, and when I say white Christmas, that's when the snow is falling and laying, was actually in 1970. And before that, well, we went back all the way back to the year of 1938, which was a real stonker when we had nearly 2 foot of snow falling in some areas. And before that, well, 1927, snow in the Midlands and in the southeast. And if you look back at the figures, well, the odds of having a white Christmas are about 1 in 9. And as we haven't had any for a while, Sonia, I reckon it's a good idea to get some money on with the bookies.
Richard, thank you very much. And that's the lunchtime news today.
Next from ITN, a news summary at 3:10 and the early evening news at 5:40.
We're both back at 12:30 tomorrow.
Here on ITV. Till then, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon. Thames News headlines this Tuesday lunchtime. A mass lobby of Westminster against changes to the 999 call system. The treasure hunters' hall that's expected to coin thousands. And a hospital says cheese to celebrate 300 years. But first, police in East London are hunting a sex attacker who dragged a disabled woman from her bed and raped her. The 50-year-old woman, who has cerebral palsy, was asleep at her home in Hackney when the man came into her room. After the attack, he escaped with £40 from her handbag. More than 20 elderly people were led to safety by firefighters when a blaze broke out at an old people's home in southeast London. 7 residents at St Mary's Home in Bexley were treated at the scene for the effects of smoke. One was taken to hospital with minor injuries. A search is underway for the former occupants of a house in Carshalton following the discovery of a child's skeleton. The remains of the headless body were discovered under the floorboards of a bathroom at a house on the St Helier estate. Experts believe the body may have been placed there 25 years ago. The festive season that's upon us brings all kinds of traditional ceremonies, some dating back centuries. And this morning saw one at the Royal Hospital in Chelsea. The ceremony goes back to 1692 and involves war veterans at the hospital being presented with a selection of traditional English and Welsh cheeses. Githa Hutton reports.
The ceremony of the Christmas cheeses dates back exactly 300 years to 1692, the year the Royal Hospital here in Chelsea was first opened. Then a London cheesemonger gave the inn pensioners Gloucestershire cheese for Christmas. Today there was £300 of cheese, a pound for each year the hospital's been open, donated by the National Dairy Council, including Caerphilly, Stilton, Red Leicester, Cheshire, Double Gloucester, Wensleydale and Lancashire. The cheese was first blessed by the chaplain. Then 91-year-old John Christopher, formerly of the Royal Army Service Corps, did the honours by cutting one of the cheeses in the Great Hall.
Some 40-odd years ago, the National Dairy Council decided to make the annual ceremony rather a special occasion. And since then, we've taken responsibility, and it's one of the great joys of our year to be able to enjoy the inn pensioners in their own surroundings and the fun and the start of Christmas almost coming here.
Now, a number of cheeses on display, English and Welsh. Why not any foreign cheeses?
Well, foreign cheeses, they tell me, can be quite palatable. But on the whole, I think English cheeses are the best.
And when the traditional annual ceremony was over, it was time for a quick sip of beer and some cheese, of course, a much appreciated early Christmas gift for the pensioners.
And now to return to more serious matters, London's emergency workers have joined politicians and trade unionists in a lobby of Parliament against proposed changes to the 999 telephone service. They were among campaigners from all over the country who converged on Westminster. The proposals would see the number of emergency telephone exchanges cut from over 50 to 3. Critics say it will put lives at risk.
Emergency service workers from across the country are attending the day-long lobby in protest at plans to radically alter the 999 emergency telephone service. The telephone watchdog Oftel wants to cut the number of exchanges handling emergency calls from 57 to just 3 and reduce the number of emergency operators from 2,000 to 150. Under the plan, it's expected that emergency calls in London would be answered in Bury St Edmunds. MPs and union leaders say the scheme will cost lives.
The reduction to 3 controls throughout the country obviously is going to mean delays. The question of local knowledge also comes into it in terms of response. The people who are taking the call are aware of the area, and after the experience of the London ambulance computer going down, I would have thought the government would have learnt a lesson from that.
I think there's going to be a risk that Londoners will be picking up the phone, dialling 999 and getting an answering machine.
But Oftel claims the changes will improve the emergency service.
I wouldn't agree to any changes which result in a poorer service. We're intent on seeing a very much better service with shorter call handling times.
A 250,000 signature petition will be handed into Parliament this lunchtime, and the Prime Minister will be challenged about the plan in the Commons later this afternoon.
Britain's busiest coach station reopened today ahead of time and on budget after undergoing a £4 million facelift. The new-look Victoria coach station in central London caters for 10 million passengers a year. It now boasts better catering facilities, electronic passenger information and new lounges.
Opening the coach station after its £4 million refurbishment this morning, the Minister for Transport in London enlisted the help of his mother, Eileen, who apparently often travels by bus. It's some time since Mr Norris himself did that, but he well remembers the state of the old Victoria coach station.
Well, I think, frankly, it's going to give people the quality of arrival in London when you get off a coach that they've deserved for a long time and that they haven't had. I think most people remember
Victoria coach station, either from the student days or as regular travellers, has been pretty grotty. London Transport have done a very, very good job giving us something I think we can all be proud of. It's safe, it's secure, it's well laid out, it's well signed. It's really an attractive place to arrive at last.
With 17 days to go before Christmas, Theatreland is in full festive swing. Opening this week at the Mermaid Theatre is A Christmas Carol. John Dowden reports.
Dreadful apparition! Why do you haunt me?
While Charles Dickens certainly knew how to tell a Christmas story, he also knew how to frighten his readers. Parts of the Mermaid Theatre's production of A Christmas Carol could even be considered as unsuitably scary for young ones. But 600 children were auditioned for the younger roles. And it does, of course, have a happy ending. In keeping with peace and goodwill to all men, the man who plays Scrooge seems to think the old codger was much maligned and wants to give him a more positive image.
He's got feelings, the guy. There were loves in his life, and he shows his emotions. His slip shows on several occasions during this performance, and I don't want him to be the Iceman cometh. No, we've got to see that it really hurts him.
A treasure hunter is waiting to hear how much he'll get for the hoard of gold and silver coins he dug up from a field in Surrey. Roger Minty uncovered thousands of coins dating from the 13th and 14th century. The bidding is expected to top £100,000. The haul goes under the hammer later this afternoon at the West London auction house Phillips, from where Sally Arthey now reports.
126 gold nobles, half nobles and quarters, and more than 6,000 silver groats, half groats and pennies are going under the hammer today. Some are 700 years old. For more than half a century they've been buried in a muddy field near Reigate, until 2 years ago when Roger Minty went walking with his metal detector and literally hit the jackpot. He's given the rarest coins to the British Museum, but under the finder's keeper's rule he'll probably pocket around £150,000 when the coins are auctioned later today. That's more than 1,000 times their face value of £120.
When I obviously initially saw that there was a hoard of coins in the ground, I didn't know how many there were or exactly what they were, but my initial reaction was shock. And my first thought was I've got to get hold of an archaeologist to get the things out properly.
Now football. Barnet chairman Stan Flashman has lodged an appeal against the £50,000 fine imposed on the club for financial irregularities. The fine was set last month by the Football League, who will pass the appeal to the Football Association for adjudication in the new year. Meanwhile, the FA have written to Mr Flashman asking for his observations on reports that scuffles took place at a London hotel before and after the league meeting which decided Barnet's punishment. And that's all. The weather forecast is next, and there's more Thames News at 3:15, at 6:30 and after news at 10. Good afternoon.
This afternoon will stay dry but cloudy. Temperatures will reach 8 degrees Celsius, that's 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Tonight, mostly dry, some drizzle. It will also turn misty and there may be some fog. The low 3 Celsius, 37 Fahrenheit.
"600 homeless people died on the streets of Britain in the past year. 2/3 of them should still be alive today.
The one thing homeless people have in common is they want somewhere to live. The difficulty is that the life on the streets is so harsh and so damaging that people can actually die before they find that housing.
Why hundreds of people sleeping rough this Christmas are dying for a home. The final this week, Thursday, 8:30 on Thames.
Somebody's going to betray a confidence in Home and Away, and that's next on Thames.